Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the webinar today. I created this webinar due to the very large appetite for knowledge about retention and the challenges most companies are facing in the current labour market to keep their people. Resignations are likely to surge even further, with just 27% of employees working in the Australian life sciences sector intending to remain with their current employer beyond this financial year. So we've got 73% of people thinking of resigning in the life sciences sector. And a recent McKinsey survey result reported that 40% of people surveyed are looking to leave their job in the next 6 months in Australia. And in contrast, another survey result reports that 97% of Australian managers have said it's challenging to find the right people right now. We know that the impact of attrition is huge and affects us financially and emotionally. We know that the cost of rehiring is about 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary, including direct and indirect hiring costs. It's prudent to also consider such factors as discretionary effort and performance, which manifests itself in decreased productivity, being the loss of productivity in the exiting person over a period of time. So as we know, when someone resigns, it's usually not a spur of the moment decision. They decide at least sort of 3 to 6 months before they actually resign. So their level of discretionary effort and performance will usually reduce significantly as they mentally check out. So that's obviously a significant cost to a business. We must consider the time it takes to recruit and how many people are involved in that process, and their time and everyone's salary that's involved in recruiting, because every hour that your HR team or hiring managers spend working to find, screen, interview and onboard a suitable candidate is a sunk cost. Think also about the IP and knowledge loss, lowered morale, lost investment in training. Employee turnover is so expensive because organisations pay direct exit costs when an employee leaves and incur additional costs to recruit and train new hires. The impact on the motivation of others in the team when someone leaves is affected, and attrition creates an overall feeling of uneasiness and instability. The labour market has never been more competitive for people, with 4% unemployment in Australia, literally thousands of jobs on offer and not enough candidates to fill them. From our experience, many candidates are entertaining 5 to 15 job opportunities at any one time and being headhunted and counter-offered on a daily basis. So if you lose someone, what's it going to take to replace them? What are the associated costs of retraining? Have you received a return on investment from the person exiting the business? And what impact does attrition have on your customers? And what stress does it place on existing staff? And are they now a flight risk? Possibly most important for leaders of organisations, we know that companies that retain good people boast a higher profit than those who don't. And we know that companies who have low attrition often boast great cultures, which means people want to stick around. Today, we are very lucky to hear from 2 panellists, Vince Lodi from FarmyWeb, who has worked with the life sciences sector for 28 years on candidate attraction and employer branding and what it takes to hire and keep the right people. And as Andrew Mears couldn't join us today, we are very lucky to have Simon Bruff, who as the Business Development Manager at FarmyWeb, spends his time working closely with life sciences clients to educate them on best practice with online recruitment advertising, candidate marketing, as well as advising on internal and external recruitment affairs. Simon has a real passion for helping startups to grow, new businesses to advertise and build a name for themselves, and top-level companies to maintain their position. When not at his desk, Simon spends his time attending events, speaking at conferences and visiting clients, which after the last 2 years, I'm sure we've all missed. We will hear from these experts and learn about their research and current statistics around what candidates and employees want and how to keep them. We'll aim to go for about 40 minutes and there'll be time for questions. So I'm going to hand over to Vince and Simon to take us through their experience around retention and what their statistics are showing. And thanks, guys, so much, because it's 1 a.m. or just after 1 a.m. in the UK. So lots of coffee for you to keep awake. Really, really grateful for your time today. Thanks so much.
Lovely. Thanks, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. So just from our point of view, what I want to do today is to really talk about our experiences in the marketplace. My presentation is primarily around data. I work on data all the time. I don't make any assumptions. I like to know what's going on, and then we use that data to actually help our clients decide what they're going to do next, what they're planning for the future, and thinking about strategies. So we're going to give you quite a lot of data today. That data will be followed up by an information sheet, which you'll all receive afterwards as well, which gives you all the sources that you can then look up and find even more behind what we've already told you. We're going to try and keep it quite light. Simon, who's joining me to replace Andrew, because Andrew can't make it, is going to really look at the real world views of what it's really like in retention and some of the things to consider. And then at the end of that, we're going to give you some what we consider to be solutions, things that you can do to actually help, and things that you can consider to actually implement as far as your company is concerned. So first of all, a little bit about myself. 25 years working in pharmaceuticals and life sciences. Before that, I was in data management. And primarily what I do is run FarmyWeb. We're the largest recruitment portal or talent acquisition portal, as we're now known, globally, working across Asia Pac, EMEA, and the US. And we've got quite a good reputation for sharing our information, not only with our clients, but with anybody. So one of the things I'll say at the outset, and we'll bring it up again at the end, is we are actually running many more of these webinars over the next few months. In September, we're running a webinar on internal mobility. In October, we've got one on personalized development for your employees. And then in November, we'll be looking at what's the future look like across each of the 3 regions we represent. Tomorrow, we're running a webinar on proactive recruitment versus reactive. So we can actually look at what can you proactively get out in the market and do to make a difference when you're recruiting. So hopefully that gives you some sort of background as to what we're about. So I'm going to hand over to Simon to introduce himself and talk a little bit about Andrew and some of the data we're going to be presenting to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. Thank you, Elizabeth, also for the lovely introduction. So I'm kind of a last-minute addition to this. I've seen it a couple of times, so bear with me, be gentle. I'm heading up the BD team at FarmyWeb at the moment. What I'm working on at the moment is growing FarmyWeb, finding new avenues, creating new partnerships, and finding exciting new things that we can do in the future. I work quite closely with Andrew at Lead Candidate, which is why I've decided to go over everything and make sure that I can, you know, honor the good name. It feels like an in memoriam you get at the Oscars. He's fine. He's absolutely fine. But I just want to make sure that I do right by him. Andrew has spent months collating data, making sure it's come from really good sources, talking with candidates, clients in the market. Lead Candidate themselves, they kind of champion pharma and biopharma outsourcing within the industry on a global level. But to start off with what they're saying, the biggest challenge is for them, it's not only hiring the right people, but it's also retaining them. It's keeping them more than the standard sort of 2 years. So hopefully today we can give you some good insights, some good data on how you can keep these people, what makes them tick, and what's going to help you get the best out of them for months and years to come.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of our partners first of all, because we do get a lot of information from our partners at a global level. I particularly wanted to mention MEXEC in Australia and the Migration Agency for giving us information. We've been trying to help them to actually bring more people into Australia. I'm going to talk at the end a little bit about churn. My biggest concern about the Australian market is a lot of your raw talent, people that are coming out of universities, tend to leave almost immediately and stay away from the country for a number of years before they return. And I think that's a great loss. And I think one of the biggest issues with the Australian market is this constant churn of people. There's no new people coming in. So our objective has been to bring more people into Australia. I've had a number of clients that have wanted to move and set up operations in Australia and have failed to do so because in case of one particular client, they were saying, look, you know, we're a biotech, we want to come into Australia, we need a place to land and expand, but we're going to need 600 people straight away to actually set up this operation. There isn't 600 people. So they ended up going to Chicago in the US, but they wanted to come to Australia. So one of the other things that we've been doing is trying to put a little bit of pressure on the government to say, you know, you've not only got to relax migration, but you've also got to think about supporting pharma and life sciences. If Australia wants to become the lead for pharma and life sciences in Asia Pac, then we really need to do something about this and do it quickly. Talking about some of our other partners globally, we've taken over the governing bodies for regulatory. I'm also talking to DIA and RAPS about their offerings as well. I'm putting PharmaWeb in as their recruitment tool. The Institute of Clinical Research, the Ethical Medicines Institute Group, the European Students Association, Network Pharma for all the MedCom side of things. And I do a lot of training with APSCO as well. And the reason we have all of these partners and we constantly grow in this partner base is because A, we get access to their membership, B, we get access to their knowledge and information. And to be honest, that's fundamental in some of the decisions that we make actually developing the business itself. So having good partnerships with good organizations really helps. And I'm delighted to be working with Elizabeth today as well. So let's talk about retention. So a couple of key things really. Why is it so important? Well, it saves company money by not having to recruit new employees for a start. We know that. It reduces productivity loss. It reduces the amount of time and money spent on training new employees, which is really expensive. Eliminates the hassle for turnover in recruiting, connects employees to your company and builds loyalty, and increases customer satisfaction. All of those things we all know, but what does it really mean? But let's look at some data. We know the Great Resignation has been a problem. I mean, people keep saying to me, you know, where's all the talent gone? Well, looking at the data I've got, my estimate is we've actually lost 1.5% of all the employees in the pharma and life sciences sector globally. And I think the bulk of that is the baby boomers, people of my age that have decided to move on and retire. You've got a lot of people that have actually, because of COVID, they've had the opportunity to think about, you know, where am I going in my life? What do I want to do? What's important to me? And a lot of those people have actually left the industry as well. You know, these are big considerations that people have to make. And then the other thing we've got here, you know, we're looking at attrition. You know, globally at the moment, it's running at around 12%. A lot of companies are thinking by September, it's going to get to 15%. These are huge numbers. If you get to 20%, I can tell you now, you will not be able to replace people as quickly as they're going. And that's going to be a big issue. Other issues, organizations with good internal mobility helps retain those employees for twice as long as organizations that don't. 94% of employees would like to stay with a company longer if they invested in their career development. So we know that's a key thing that candidates are looking for. And employees want to be recognized and rewarded for their contribution to the business. And I think old school ways of looking at management, the way that we've done things in the past, just because we've always done it that way, we should carry on. The world's a different place. We need to change. We need to invest more in our people. We need to get closer to our people and get them to be loyal to the business. It's one of the key ways of actually training people and keep them interested in you as a company. We've actually seen for the first time in 28 years of doing this now, candidates who actually want to work primarily for the culture of the company. A 6.5% rise in people moving for similar or less money in some cases to go and work for the company that they really want to work for. And that's all based around what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and what people are telling them about a company that they don't get at their own organization. So these things need to be thought about and actually thought about how we deal with them from internal positions. The other question we've got is, you know, what happens when someone does decide to leave? And you have to look at some of the latest counteroffer stats. You know, 50% of candidates accept a counteroffer are active on the job market again within 60 days. That certainly applies within Australia. 90% of candidates who accept a counteroffer end up leaving within 12 months anyway. So retention's got to be the way to keep growing and keep developing, because, you know, if someone wants to leave, that's already a seed that's sown in their mind. They're going to go anyway. You very rarely turn someone around and get them as positive as they were before. So don't let them get to this situation in the first place is part of our core data set. So when we're looking at some of the other key things, 62% of employees are approached by a new employer to consider a new job. 62% of all of your candidates We recently did a survey on LinkedIn who's suggesting that something like 71% of everyone is an active or passive candidate. But the other thing to consider is when we're looking globally around some areas like medics, clinical research, devices is one, some sales roles, most people are being approached between 50 and 100 times a day, 7 days a week, about new opportunities. I'm having candidates at the moment complaining that the day they join at a new company, people are ringing them to say, well done on your new role, but guess what, if it doesn't work out, we'll be here to support you, so we'll keep in touch. Which is also leading to an increase of around about 6 to 7% of candidates that leave within the first 10 days of joining the company because it wasn't what they were expecting. So all of these things need to be thought about. 55% of employees working at mid-sized companies are being offered a 10% pay rise or more. Well, that's not enough, because if they leave, they're going to get about 23%. So we need to adjust this indifference to keep people. You're going to have to offer them what they need, because we know a lot of people really, really want that salary increase. They need it. Cost of living has gone up. Things have changed. And again, 37% of all companies are expanding internationally, and about 25% of companies in Australia are expanding generally. So you've got all of that pressure coming on. We know that a lot of organizations are looking at Australia as a fantastic hub. But can you find the people to actually do the job? That's the question. 51% of staff and companies are offered at least a 10% pay rise to move to new companies, but we know it's higher than that. That's come from a survey from Gartner, I believe it was. Well, my data is telling me it's about 23%. We'll look at the real figures as we move forward. And again, 77% of all companies are currently hiring for new roles across the board. It could be a cleaner, it could be a senior manager. They're all hiring. Everyone's expanding. Everyone's taking the opportunity to grow with the current market. So there's a lot of pressure on retention overall, but also on how do you actually bring new people into the company and keep them. So the biggest one for Australia, 45% of companies we're talking to are looking to bring new talent from overseas into Australia. Everyone's striving to do this, to get those people to come over. And to be honest with you, when we're looking at the employer value proposition of Australia as a country and location of a place to work, you've got pretty much everything you need to bring these people, apart from changing the way that we actually bring them aboard and onboard them, because I think those sorts of things are very important. One of the most interesting pieces of data I've got talking to a lot of candidates is the fact that almost every city in Australia is in the top 10 of cities to work in the world. You know, these are things that we should be selling to bring more people into the Australian environment. 79% of employees who quit their jobs point to lack of appreciation as the key reason for leaving. Sometimes just patting someone on the back and saying, do you know what, you did a really good job of that, and recognizing that and rewarding it, or even just making people aware of what someone's done can make a difference between someone leaving an organization or not. Good management is absolutely key in retention. And again, looking at what Gartner said, 24% of Australian employees are actively seeking other employment. And that's constant. And that's been going on since, to be honest with you, the beginning of the year. And it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse because everything's getting busier. We've got 6 years of growth in pharma and life sciences alone. So there's a lot going on. So coming to the end of some of the data traits here, when we're looking at some of the Hays information, 46% of Australian respondents selected a salary increase as their most important priority. And that's primarily the pressure because of cost of living. As I said, it's going to be addressed one way or another. And again, a lot of companies looking at Australia for clinical research, preclinical development, you know, that increases what people are looking for. CRAs are in high demand. You're probably 300% short of CRAs in Australia currently for the sort of jobs that are there for them. And obviously other key issues around that as well. So in certain areas, it's even worse than probably some of the things that you're experiencing. So that sort of sets the scene with some of the data. We're going to come back to this as we move forward. And I'm going to ask Simon now to sort of talk about the landscape, talk about real world activity, walking the walk, basically, I think, Simon. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vince. There's a scary blend of data in that first section. There's a lot of really, really encouraging stats about people coming to Australia, but also, it really sets the scene as to how difficult it is at the moment and the challenges that we're facing. There's a good question in the chat, which we'll come to towards the end, and we'll be able to answer that specifically then. So for now, focusing on the landscape of what we're seeing within life sciences on a global level, the talent employer dynamic has completely shifted over the last couple of years. Your staff are now looking for more social contracts within the organization. They don't want to work in the same way they've worked historically. And a lot of this has been brought on by the pandemic that we've suffered through for the last 2 years. People have, as Vince earlier said, reevaluated what's important. They want that balance, they want that flexibility, and they want to be able to have a great career and a great home life too. And this is what's really, really driving things. The Great Resignation, it's a problem. I know Australia's been hit slightly different than the rest of the world, but we're still seeing quite a lot. I think the estimate from news.com is that 10% of the Australian market left their job in 2021. That's 1.3 million people. It's a massive number. And on top of that, we've got more job vacancies than ever before in Australia. That's at an all-time high. So talent is few and far between. What's making this so much worse is that the candidate is now so empowered that they have the choice. They can step back for the first time ever and review their options, think about it, sit pretty, because they're already in a job that's paying their bills, keeping a roof over their head, keeping them entertained. They're just looking at what steps to make next, and they have so much power now. That makes our job a lot harder. Moving on to the next slide, please, Vince. So when you're looking at turnover, it's really important to consider why people are leaving. Some of the most consistent reasons for leaving, according to McKinsey, are first and foremost a sense of belonging. If people don't feel like they fit and belong within that organization, they're not going to stay and they're not going to bleed for it. They're going to go. They're going to find something else they care about more. Flexibility is a very commonly misunderstood term. Flexibility doesn't just mean working from home. A large amount of the world is working from home at the moment, and I think Vince has a lot of stats on that later. Flexibility looks like being able to go to a doctor's appointment. It looks like being able to go and work from your mum's house because you've had a power cut. It's not just, oh, I work from home, I can sit in my boxers and my t-shirt and do my job. It's so much more than that. Being valued by the manager, the direct line manager, but also by the organization as a whole is so important. It adds to that sense of belonging, and it adds to the overall passion of the employee. People will give their best work if they feel valued. Career development is really important. Over the last 2 years, a lot of things have been halted, of course, because the economic landscape hasn't allowed us to progress. But now people are waking up again and they're thinking, what do my next steps look like? People in my shoes, millennials, we spent every interview of our junior careers being asked where we see ourselves in 5 years. Now we're starting to ask our employers, where can I be in 5 years? And we want to get there. So we have to have a really clear line of what's available for that person. And to be honest, be transparent. If it's going to be a few years, tell that person, ask for their partnership, ask them to work with you on reaching that goal together, and you'll have a more engaged, driven and motivated employee. People also want to work with people that they can care about and trust. Having that really, really good camaraderie within your organization is really important. These people you probably see more than your family at the moment. So you've got to make sure the dynamic's good, that you're with people like-minded, the culture fit's good. And importantly, being fully equipped, it's so important, but overlooked. You need to have all of the tools physically and mentally to be able to do your job to the best of your ability, because then you're going to put the best work in. One thing we're seeing a lot of at the moment, because it's so hard to get talent, are costs being cut across the board. If you're taking away key services from some of your departments, they won't be able to function to the same level. You need to make sure that everyone is fully equipped moving forward. Vince, is there anything that you'd add to that list, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll go back to a story from a very old friend of mine who took on a job from talent acquisition from pharmaceuticals and moved and worked for the BBC in the legal department. And he said something to me once when he'd been there for about 6 months. He said, I had to really work hard to change the view internally of what we actually do. And they had probably 100 of the top lawyers in the world working with the BBC on all of the key issues around programme and everything that they did. And he said it just didn't work. And he said the reason it didn't work is because everyone was the number one alpha male, alpha female. They want the best of everything. They're all fighting for it. What he said is we had to make the decision to hire the right employee, not any employee. And the key thing was the operation always used to go for the best people in the world to come and work for the BBC. It didn't work because not everyone is a top player. What they wanted was doers, people that could actually work outside of the box, take on other projects, that type of thing. The same thing applies now. Hire the right employee, not any employee, and make sure they're the right fit culturally for you as an organization. Because if you don't, they're just going to walk. Simple as that, really. Okay, Simon?
Yeah, true. Perfect. Next slide, please. So looking at what turnover costs, yeah, we had some great data from Elizabeth at the beginning. You know, you're looking at 6 to 9 months of that employee's salary in terms of financial cost. But there's also so much more than that. You've got to look at what it means to your customers. If I left FarmyWeb tomorrow, I would have a plethora of customers who would be disappointed that I'd gone. They wouldn't be sure what to do. They wouldn't be sure how to react. And actually, some of them might not even know who to contact within the organization. My organization will lose business if I leave. It's a real problem. Colleagues as well. You know, my colleagues would be left to pick up all of the slack that goes with me going. You know, that's... to be honest, more than 40 hours a week work they have to somehow do between all of them. It adds strain, unnecessary pressure, and let's be brutally honest, never before has an organization gone, well, Simon's left, let's split his salary between you guys and you just work a bit harder. It doesn't happen. Culture. It's really important. You know, if you're losing the person that walks into the office every morning, gives high fives, is a bit of a hype man, gets everyone ready for the day, what happens when they stop doing that? How does that set the tone for the day? What's the actual real life effect that that person leaving has on the office? We've all lost our work best friend at some point in life, and it's made us think about, actually, do I want to work here without them? It's really, really difficult. Morale as well. If one person leaves, statistically speaking, more and more people start thinking about this, and I have some stats on this moving forward. You want to keep the morale high. You want to make sure that people don't consider leaving. And finally, performance. You know, if everyone's too busy because now they're burnt out because they're picking up my work, they're having to pick up my customers, they're having to deal with all of the issues of fallout from me leaving, performance as a business is going to plummet. You know, people aren't going to be able to get their own jobs done because they're going to be focusing on the highest priority tasks, which will always be retaining business. This sets us up for a real set of problems. So some stats on the actual impact it has on people. So this is some research that lead candidate done directly on their own audiences. So when it comes to the impact on employees when someone leaves, 30% of people say that the biggest issue is workload. It's having those extra tasks that they have to take care of. 27% say the issue is then isolation. You know, they are now so much busier. They've lost a key person in the communication chain that actually they feel a bit more disconnected from the team than ever before. It's not the same work environment. 26% say that loyalty is the biggest problem. If so-and-so's left, I want to know why. Did they drive them out of the building? Did they want to leave on their own terms? I want to know exactly what it is. Did they fall out over a few $1,000s? Who knows? It sows the seed of dissent in the brain and it causes problems. But an overwhelming number of people, 55% in fact, said reward was the biggest thing that they thought about. Am I being paid enough to do the job that I do now? Have they gone somewhere that's going to pay them better for doing the same job? Is the grass greener on the other side? These are the questions that these people start asking, and that's never a good sign. Vince, out of that, would you say there's anything that they've missed? Anything you would add?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, and I see it quite a lot with companies, especially the smaller ones actually, is destabilization of your own workforce. If you get someone that suddenly leaves and they tell all their friends, oh yeah, I've just got a $15,000 bonus, I just got a $23,000 bonus. Guess what? Everyone else in the team is going to be thinking, well, why can't I get that? Why am I staying here when I can't get that sort of money? I can move down the road and get that sort of money, or I can get a better package, I might get a car, whatever it is. So I think the money side of things has to be managed very carefully. Give bonuses earlier rather than later, make people feel wanted. Reward can also be appreciation. Someone giving someone a bottle of wine and just saying, look, well done today, you did a really good job, you stayed late and I just really appreciate it, thanks for helping, can make a big difference. If you start giving individuals high salary hikes, or you try and ring fence people, all it does is destabilize your own workforce, and that can lead to all sorts of problems. So that would be the only thing I'd add to that one.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, it's a problem.
Okay.
Moving on to the next slide, if possible, please. So obviously there's been a lot of data. Some of it's quite negative, some of it's doom and gloom. This is a more positive one. So this is actually the impact that retention has when you get it right. There's a big list of things that go really well. This was published in a white paper by Oracle NetSuite last year. If you haven't read it, go and have a look, because it is quite an encouraging document. But a couple of things that I want to focus on here are experience. If you retain staff for a long time in a role and they progress at that role, they become instantly so experienced at what they're doing. They learn your business inside out, the products inside out, what you're doing inside out, the pipeline, and they live and breathe it. And that passion's translated. You want to keep those people on board as much as possible. And it only takes a few years for them to become real experts in what they do. Also, the customer experience. A lot of people that I deal with like returning and seeing the same people on the site all the time. They like speaking to the same people. They like that I'll do the sale. They'll like that Abby will get the job online for them and give them their statistics. They like that Lisa's going to pick up the phone and check in on them, make sure everything's going great on their end. That experience is so important to our customers. And revenue. Most importantly, if productivity is up, if everyone's doing their job and doing it well, revenue will go up. This is a really, really important thing to look at moving forward, because if you can nail retention and get it right, these are all the benefits that you're going to get from doing it. On to the next slide, please, Vince. So when we're looking at moving forward, it's really important to realize that actually the retention issue itself is old news. People now are leaving for the same reasons they were leaving 5 years ago. It's not feeling valued. It's not being up to market standards. It's everything that we already knew happened. What's happened now is obviously we've had a pandemic that's really escalated this, as well as the market conditions. It's made this almost a pandemic of its own. It's a real thing that we have to really treat now, nip it in the bud before it becomes even bigger. So we need to look at what we can do to move forward and get the right people in. So on to the next slide, please, Vince. This is a formula, a foundation for success that Andrew at Lead Candidate put together, and this is what he uses when he's actively placing people. So you start with getting your hiring right. You make sure you get the right person for the right job at the right time. From there, you've got to make sure you have a strong engagement cocktail, and I'll show you what that looks like in the next couple of slides. Then you have to develop and evolve that person alongside the business. You make sure you're scaling them up to the same level you're scaling absolutely everything else. And then you repeat that with the next person. You do this more and more and more, and then you find that you have a growing and engaged and developing business, not hemorrhaging left, right, and center. And again, Vince, we were talking about this slide earlier. Was there anything you'd add in there as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the thing that sort of sits around this is with all these things that you're doing when you're hiring, engaging, developing someone, then repeating that process, recognize what they do. Recognize not only the bad things, but recognize the good things, reward them for that, talk to them about it, make them feel engaged with the business. And again, just keep that process going all the time and constantly repeat that. So management is becoming really, really important. The little things you say can make a big difference to someone. And I challenge anyone that's listening today, if your boss came up to you and said, you know what, you did a really good job today, you're going to feel great. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter what sort of level you are either. Sometimes it's nice to be recognized that you did the right thing. So yeah, I think this is a great slide, actually.
It's true. Got an even better one coming up next. Next slide, please. So this is probably one of my favorite slides in the whole presentation. You've got to hire right, not right now. It's better to wait and keep the role live longer to make sure you get the perfect person for the role than just hire function, because function doesn't equal fit. The analogy that Andrew uses here is the All Blacks. You know, if you're into your rugby, the All Blacks are like an elite institute within rugby. But one thing about New Zealand is there are really fantastic rugby players in New Zealand who will never be All Blacks. And that's purely because they don't fit the culture of the organization. We're talking incredible high performance athletes that will never be part of this almost elite embodiment of sport just because they don't match. You've got to get your hiring right. Andrew references a book called Legacy by Jim Kerr Forbes. It's on the reading list, along with about 20 other books he's recommended me to read. There's some really, really good data in there, well worth having a look at. If you haven't read it, please do go and give it a go. I'm going to be trying to myself as well. You've also got to look at new hire retention. I know Vince has some stats around this and why this is so important in those first few months to make sure you really, 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 really nail that. On to the next slide, please. We spoke earlier about an engagement cocktail, and other than being a great little earworm, here's actually what that looks like. There's so many different things that you have to do to make sure you get your employee engagement right. The first thing is being flexible. And as I said earlier, being flexible doesn't just mean letting them work from home. It means recognizing that real people have real lives and have real situations, and you have to adapt and be agile when they come along. Life is really unpredictable, especially now. So we've just got to make sure that we can be humans when it comes to people. On a similar vein, treat everybody fairly. Fair is perfect. You know, you don't have to be over the top nice. You don't have to be downright brutal. Just be fair. Think about people as humans and treat them as you'd like to be treated. You've got to pay attention to employee well-being. Another term that's become really, really popular over the last couple of years is burnout. I know I've experienced it. I know for a fact Vince has experienced it. It's really not easy. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our employees, checking in with them on a mental level, an emotional level, making sure that they're okay. When they feel looked after and valued, they are generally more engaged and they want to work harder because they appreciate they've got it good with you because you have their best interests at heart. You also have to be able to enable career progression and development. This is one that we spoke about earlier. You just simply have to be able to empower your staff to succeed. Consult with your employees. Ask them what they think. Ask them their genuine thoughts on issues that you're having internally. See if they have good responses. See if they have ideas. See if they can actually solve their own issues by applying themselves to them. Also, reward well and recognize often. You know, reward well doesn't mean pay so much more than everyone else. Yes, be competitive, but also recognize that that the work they're doing is so valued. One story I always really like, in the early days of FarmyWeb, Vince used to take bottles of champagne into the CEO's office and put them on the table and basically say, go and give this to James because they've done a wonderful job on this. Go and give that to Patty because she's been here 10 years today. All of these kind of things. And I always wonder, if Vince wasn't there handing out bottles of champagne, showing recognition for even just the little things, would the business have scaled the same way it did? And honestly, I don't think it would have. Because in those days, those formative years where you've got those people putting in more hour, more passion, more energy than ever before, you have to keep them engaged. You have to keep them switched on, aligned with you and passionate. And I think that's why it's so important to recognize often. Another thing that's really overlooked is actually supporting your frontline managers, the people who get the grievances in their ear, making sure that they're empowered to actually be able to solve these issues. Make sure the relationship between the bottom of the hierarchy and the top of the hierarchy is perfectly navigated by that go-between. Make sure that they're empowered to make strong decisions on your behalf and also convey the thoughts and feelings of the staff to senior management and get any issues resolved. If you can nail this engagement cocktail, you will get less attrition. It's really, really difficult to get this right, but even if you just focus on a few of these, you'll see an improvement. On to the next slide, please, Vince. So the last thing to think of really is that this retention target, it's constantly moving. You know, everything is in a state of constant change at the moment. We never know what's going to happen in the news. We don't know what's going to happen on a global level or local level. So we just have to be agile, prepared for anything, and ready for these changes when they happen. We live in a VUCA world, VUCA being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I've been called a lot worse, but I'll take it. Communication has to be two-way. It has to be frequent, and it has to be really transparent. You've got to make sure that you're having high-level conversations about what the business actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. Before I was at FarmyWeb, I worked for a really large global company, and they loved keeping just useless corporate secrets, you know, really things that didn't affect anything, but they drop it on you at the very last minute. And this is something that's been planned for months. Why am I finding out 5 minutes before it's happening? It doesn't make me feel like part of the team. It doesn't make me feel important. And honestly, it's just irritating. Have some transparency. If there are issues affecting teams and people dealing with them, let them know, unless, of course, they are high-stake issues. Being transparent with the team, making sure they feel included, on board, trusted, is going to make everyone rally around you when the time comes. But most importantly, and this is something that Vince kind of led with, you've got to walk the walk. Andrew tells a story about one of the CEOs that he works with. He's created this really phenomenal structure at work where they encourage parents to go to sports days of their children, to go to nativity plays, to go and be present, because real life is really important. So, you know, you get all of these lovely things of parents going and doing this on company time, and it's great. But then when it comes to the CEO's son's sports day, he doesn't go. He doesn't attend. He deems his work is more important. And Andrew has to call him out and say, you're not doing what you've told everyone else to do. If these are your values for your company, you have to live and breathe them. If you've set a rule in place, lead by example. The best leaders lead by example. And I think it's really important, if you're creating this wonderful engagement cocktail, you've got to do it yourself. You've got to do everything and live and breathe every word you say. I think that kind of brings me to the end of everything that Andrew wanted to go over today, and I hope I've done him justice. Back to you, Vince.
Lovely. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I think you have, actually. I particularly like the walk one. There's a lot of people out there that let's say need to pick up their game as far as modern management's concerned, and walking the walk is part of that.
It's true.
And it's a hard thing to learn, unfortunately. Okay, let's go back to some data. So solutions and ideas, basically. So one of the things that FarmyWeb does is we look at what anyone who's looking for a new job looks for. And this isn't any assumptions. We're actually tracking candidates literally 24/7, 365. And what we're picking up on is the things that candidates really look for. So we have hubs on FarmyWeb where we have a lot of employer branding, and we actually keep tagging the pages where the candidates are hitting. So the biggest ones are things like the culture of the company. They want to know who the company really are, what are your teams like, what's the global view, what's the future look like, even from the day I start. What's my development plan going to look like? What training am I going to get? Who am I going to work with? Can I move around internally if I get bored doing what I'm doing, that type of thing? Do you have diversity policies? And what are the people like at the site in the location where I'm going to be working? This is what candidates are actually looking for. The other big ones are these ones in the center when they're looking at their career. So candidates are always looking for career path examples, a day in the life, what training am I going to get? They want to see team lead videos. They want to see why it's a great place to work. What opportunities am I going to get, and what benefits am I going to get at this particular site? And success stories. You know, this is where they're looking at, you know, people that are on video for say 1.5 to 3 minutes talking about why they love working for the company. All of your employees will also be looking for this, but you should have this internally already anyway. You should be talking to them, getting them to do videos about how great it is working for you. Team lead videos to actually attract better people. You know, use all of these things that we know candidates are looking for to not only recruit new people, but talk to your own internal staff about, you know, is it a great place to work? Do you like the people you're working with? Do we have a good enough diversity policy? And then the other things that people really care about, you know, charity work. What are you doing to give back? If you've won awards, great, let's share that with people. And environmental sustainability policies, particularly in Australia, are very, very important to people. So things that you need to talk about internally, talk to people, what do they want to do about these sorts of things, get them involved in these sorts of things, and actually make it a story that everyone in the company knows, down to the cleaner. If someone picks up the phone in the night when someone's calling, they should be able to tell everybody about what the company does. It's one of the things that I promote quite a lot in our own business. So, a couple of solutions, real quick ones. Promote your culture, think about onboarding and beyond, career development roadmaps, internal mobility, remote and flexible working, are various different things, and money. So let's talk about culture first of all. So Gallup polls, companies that focus on their culture, 29% higher profit, 19% higher sales, and 72% lower attrition. The culture is the key. And we're seeing huge amounts of people now starting to think about that. 96% of employees believe that empathy is more important to retain them. It's basically everyone. Everyone just wants to be listened to and recognized for what they do and understand where they're coming from. And then when we're looking at LinkedIn, their 5 drivers are opportunities to learn and grow, belonging, organizational values, support and well-being, and collaboration. This is just basically talking to people. Why aren't we talking to our staff? It doesn't have to just be the manager that they're responsible for. I'm starting to see a lot of mid-sized companies now where management are doing a walk around, just chatting to people, sitting down in the canteen with them at lunchtime, having a beer, whatever it might be. Start to get to know your team, make them part of the business, and they won't want to leave. When we're looking at onboarding, interesting figures. Clear onboarding process improve retention rates by 23 to 69%, depending on the region. Employees in their first year have a 33% turnover. Obviously, other tenured employees have that as well. The reasons for all this is lack of benefits, desire, work-life balance, all those types of things. So what I'm starting to see now is companies that actually employ, and then I admit there's some of the bigger companies, but you can certainly do it as a smaller company as well. So when they actually bring people on board, they have a team that sits there and talks to them before they even start about where they're going, what they're going to be doing in the future, what their development plans are, what opportunities might come for them. And then once they've actually joined, what happens then is they then talk about putting those things in place, talking to their managers, and then regularly keeping in contact with them. But what they also do is they work with your entire staff internally, so all of your employees, talking about where are they going to go as well. Do you want a roadmap to your future? Are you happy what you're doing? Can we move you around internally if we need to? What else do we need to do? So onboarding and beyond, the beyond is the key thing, because guess what? They're the ones that relate to the staff that you've already got. Keep them, give them what they want, ask them what they want. And in some cases, it might not be what you're expecting, but we'll come back to that in a moment. So when we're looking at career development programs, everybody, because of the pandemic, had everything put on hold for a couple of years. People are trying to catch up. People want access to training. People want to know who they should be working with to develop their own skills, and they want to learn from people. And we already know we've lost a lot of those people. So 70% of employees are compelled to leave for the sake of career advancement because they don't feel that they can get it in the organization where they are now. Has anyone actually asked them what they wanted to do? Most companies don't. They don't even know, and they're quite surprised. 60% of employees list learning and new related job skills and advancing their careers as among their top priorities. 83% of Gen Z want to learn new skills to perform better in their current role. They actually want to work harder, but they're not given the skills to do so. And again, sadly, employees that feel that their skills are not being put to good use are 10 times more likely to look for a new job. And guess what? When they go, it normally sets off an avalanche of other people that follow them. So all of these things need to be taken into account. There's a lot more data behind this, which are on our handouts, which you can read as well. So when we're looking at internal mobility, this is a key for bigger organizations where they can move people around within the organization, because people do get stale. Most millennials probably look to move at the sort of 2 to 2.5 year mark. So that's the danger point. If you've got someone that's good and you can move them around to do something different, or even work in a different department or on a different project, they're the ones that you can save by just offering them something new to do, working for a different manager. And again, 40% of employees state that poor internal mobility and training is the main reason for leaving. because they couldn't do anything else. They'd done as much as they could for the company. But employee intent to stay is 33% higher in companies where they have got internal mobility, and it's encouraged because you're encouraging them to go and do learn new skills, move on and do something different within the organization. If they're good people, do what you can to keep them. Absolutely key. So we've been talking about remote and flexible working. I think the key thing really is, we've already got it on here, nearly half of all workers are willing to accept a low salary to work remotely. 30% say they would ideally like to work 100% remote. I've got clients at the moment, big international clients that are saying that they're ensuring and basically stating that all employees need to go back full time. They're also worked out that they're going to have to pay at least 10% more than anyone else in the market. They also know they're going to lose 20% of their entire staff. And they also know that they're not going to be able to keep people. But that's a corporate decision that they've made. Not sure it's the right one, but that's where they're going. 18% of workers left the job in the last 12 months due to no flexibility. Regardless of what we think, the pandemic has happened, people have changed. We're all working differently. You can't turn back the clock. People have had this great freedom. They know it works. They know it can be done. It's what people want to do. So the key thing with flexibility as well, it doesn't just mean remote. Flexibility can be, and I use Simon as an example, Simon, tell them about your, school issues that you have. This is a classic example of how you need to be flexible.
Yeah, of course. So in the pandemic, I homeschooled a then 3-year-old, which was crazy, to be honest. So we had these huge work packs to bring home from school, and we had to go through just about everything. I managed to do that alongside my work. I was able to do my homeschooling, and then I was able to log on later, catch up my workload. When the team knew I was homeschooling, I was completely left alone. That's no emails, no phone calls, absolutely nothing until I got back to my computer and back to work. It didn't affect my pay. It didn't affect my holiday, nothing at all. It just enabled me to be on the ball. It enabled me to be a brilliant parent and also a brilliant employee. And that level of flexibility, I just don't know if I would have got it anywhere else, to be honest. And I don't know if enough places are ready to offer that. It's hard, very hard.
Thanks, Simon. That's just one example. I mean, other examples are, I'm working with a number of biotechs at the moment that are starting to offer their employees, especially if they're carers or they've got elderly parents or they've got children, or even if you've got parents that, some work earlier in the morning and finish earlier and some work later and then work later. So you've got overlaps with parents getting kids to school and back and all the rest of it. But that sometimes makes a difference between whether or not you can retain someone or whether or not they're just going to leave and go and do something else. So it might not just be, let's let them work remote. It might be, what is it they really want? Ask the question, to come and work here, what do we need to do to get you? And it might be the simplest, easiest thing. It might be every lunchtime I need to leave at 12 and be back by 1 because I'm caring for my elderly mother, or whatever it might be. So these sorts of things, this is all about being ethical, being caring, being seen as being caring, and actually genuinely wanting to take care of your staff, because guess what? The loyalty factor will be fantastic with those people because you've given them more than anyone else would have done. Moving on from there, when you're looking at money, well, we know, there you go, packages in Australia have increased by 23%. So you've got a choice. You can pay your staff 10% and they'll leave and get 23%, or just give them the 23% anyway, if money's the key thing. Sign-on bonuses up to $15,000. I'm seeing quite a lot of, especially in the pharma sector. The problem with that, of course, is it destabilizes your internal workforce. We've already talked about this. If you let money be your main driver, you cannot win. Employee retention will still be the same issue, regardless of what you do. It's the other things that make a difference. It's the culture, it's the caring, it's understanding their needs and helping and supporting those people, and they will become the best employees you've ever employed. So some final comments really for myself and Simon. With Australia, you've got to stop the churn. All you're doing is churning the same people, fighting for the same people. You've got to get more people to come into Australia. You've got to develop your own employee base and try and maintain some of those really bright minds that tend to just leave once they've got their qualifications, once they've got their doctorate, and then come back in 20 years' time. Well, that's not going to help anyone right now. And training. training is the key. I'm starting to see a lot of organizations, a lot of universities across a mere level, and we're seeing a lot of organizations starting to do training as one of the key requisites that they're putting in place to actually bring people up to speed. If we don't train people, they're never going to learn and develop as an individual. And we've already talked about the webinars. We'll send you a list of the webinars as well to anyone that wants them. They're free of charge. Come along and join us. We're just sharing information that our researchers have picked up and are given us when we're looking at where we're moving as a business. Really, really good. Attention's very high, and I think a lot of people get something from them. And Simon, I know you want to talk a little bit about FarmyWeb.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be very good at BD if I didn't. So FarmyWeb, for those that don't know who we are, just very, very quickly, we are a life science talent acquisition platform. We function now in Australia for a couple of years. We offer job posting, CV database access, newsletter distribution to niche disciplines within life sciences, be it devices, be it sales, whatever your needs, we've got a presence. We also help with all of these things that you've seen today with the employer branding stuff. So if you are looking to increase your profile, increase your reach in the industry, reach out to us at sales@farmyweb.com. And if you're a candidate looking to use a specialized job board to find your next role, go and log on to www.farmyweb.jobs/au and have a look.
Thanks,
Lovely.
Simon. Thank you. That's great.
Right.
We've got a few questions. Can we just run through them? Because I know we're running a little bit late.
Let's do it.
That's all right. All good. So Suzanne asks, what is driving the extreme Australian challenge for talent versus other countries? Can I just answer just a little bit about that for a second?
Yeah.
I think from my experience, from what I hear, globally, this is a problem. I think you guys can speak to it way better than I can about the UK, the US, EMEA, what's happening globally. But anything that I hear in the media and that I read is about a global talent shortage. I know that my husband works with, he works globally and he works with India, and they had 140 jobs to recruit or something like that. They had 50 people they'd booked in for an interview, and none of them turned up, right? Out of 50 candidates, not one turned up for the interview. The ones that they could get in touch with said, oh, yeah, sorry, I got another job, but didn't bother telling anybody. So, yeah, so that's India. But, you know, I think this is happening everywhere. Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not just Australia. EMEA's been in trouble for probably a couple of years now, and it's just started to get a lot worse. The pandemic hasn't helped. There's huge amounts of growth in the sector. The US is now starting to feel the pinch on finding good people. You know, we're starting to talk to more and more US companies. I think the problem that Australia has is you've got the same issues that everyone else has got, but you've also got a bigger problem. That is that a lot of companies and a lot of organizations see your younger talent, people coming out of universities with their doctorates, degrees, as a really easy hire. You know, you've got some really good, well-qualified people that just get picked off by organizations and moved out straight away. So you're using that young talent base. So, you know, do more to keep that talent base and train more people, I think is the way forward. But yeah, you're not the only ones. You're not standing alone. Everyone's in the same position. Yeah. And there's not a lot you can do about it at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think too, Suzanne, for Australia is, I mean, what we find is, I've been a recruiter for 30 years and in the this space, medical device and pharma, for 17 years. And what we find is that in 2020, everybody stopped hiring, and we had obviously elective surgery issues, reps couldn't go into hospitals, all this type of thing. And then when 2021 came along, everyone thought, oh, okay, we've sort of got used to this COVID thing now. I think we need to hire some people because we've lost some because they decided that, you know, they just wanted to go and do something else. and then everyone started hiring, and that hasn't stopped.
Mm.
And I think there's a variety, there's so much competition for good talent, especially we do a lot in the sales arena in medical devices and pharma, all functions, job functions, but sales is where the volume is. And I think that it's so much competition for it, and there is still so much uncertainty around COVID that people, and with interest rate rises and inflation, I think people that we're talking to, because we have to headhunt people every single day, are saying, oh, I'm a bit nervous, I'm just going to stay where I am, I'm not that unhappy. I mean, there's some things that could be improved, like culture usually is a big one, and leadership. But I'm just going to stay where I am for now. So there's a number of reasons, but yeah, I think globally it's a massive problem, and yeah, any if you read anything, globally, there's a lot of in paper articles and the media about retention and the global talent shortage. And then Suzanne asks again. Another question I should say from Suzanne. What are your recommendations for retaining the baby boomers? They often don't care about career development. How do we keep them working and actively engaged?
Yeah, well, I think, in fact, I've been working with a big pharma company on early years and what they need to do. And basically, it's all about development. Give them a very clear structure, roadmap of training you're going to give them, what they're going to be doing. Moving them around within the business, don't let them get bored. They're probably going to give you 6 months before they get bored of doing what they're doing, and you need to get them onto something new. And have good managers that can manage younger people. There's no good putting someone with them that can't manage younger people. They need to feel like they're part of the team. They need to feel like they're being managed by someone that's just like them. So keep the young guys together, train them, bring them on, and develop their skill sets, whatever those skill sets might be. That would be my advice.
But for baby boomers, when they don't care much about career development, training for them, it's like, well, I'm at the end of my career now. I've only got 5 years before I retire. How do you think that if they don't care about training, what is it? I would say it's acknowledgement and recognition is probably what I would say for these people, for anybody, but especially what we find with baby boomers is they don't feel relevant anymore. So making them feel relevant.
Yeah, sorry, Elizabeth, I misunderstood what you said there. I thought you were talking about early years people, not baby boomers.
No worries. Yeah, no,
sorry, baby boomers, completely
boomers.
Different thing. You're looking at people my age, Christ. The problem with baby boomers is they have pretty much done what they've done. A lot of them have already gone. And I don't think there's a great deal that you can do to keep them other than give them the opportunity to bring people on. So again, it's going back to the training thing. Get them doing the training, get them managing the people, get them to start to think about succession planning, because that's pretty much where they are. I'm succession planning now. I've got 6 years and I'm already working out how we're going to do that and get them in management positions where they can make a difference.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Yeah. And I think if they can't, because you can't put them all in management positions, but the ones who can't, keep them relevant, keep them feeling like they're still contributing. Give them a young person to mentor, give them, because they've got so much stuff, so much IP, give them someone to mentor and keep them, make them feel relevant and recognised. That's what I would say. The baby
mentorship was going to be my point as well. I think it's really important when you have someone that's been in the business for a long time, that's amassed these fantastic skills and this great industry knowledge, give them someone to teach that to. Because nothing makes you feel better at what you do than teaching, does it? If you have someone you need to show them the ropes, do it. You'll feel so empowered by letting that person go, actually, this guy's been doing it since you've been alive. They'll teach you everything you need to know. Everyone gets a confidence boost then. Everyone feels good.
100%. I agree. Exactly. Louise has got a question here. Vince mentioned Australia is also experiencing the Great Resignation, but it is manifesting slightly different to other countries. What's different?
Yeah, well, in my opinion with Australia, I think you probably had a bit more of the baby boomers going than almost anybody else. I think because people can, people seem to like when you're over here, the work-life balance is more important, and they're doing it younger more than anything else. So I was talking to a US company just today, in actual fact, and what they found with the Australian market is they don't actually like sending over any of their senior members of their team, because what happens is they get used to the lifestyle and they can't move them anywhere else. You know, the problem you've got, and I think you guys will need to wake up to this really, the lifestyle opportunities, the work-life balance that you get in Australia is very different to almost everywhere else. As I said, you've got the best cities to live in the world. Out of the top 10, you've got 4 of them. You know, you've got coast, you've got beaches, you've got fantastic countryside. I think it's a fantastic place to work. So, you know, and it's a fantastic place to retire. It's a fantastic place to do whatever you want to do. And I think that's probably the biggest difference with Australia. You've got to get more people coming to Australia, because I tell you what, they won't leave.
Yeah, okay. Louise, we can have a further conversation about that if you want, because we've got some other questions. I know Louise, obviously. So from Simon Goodger, many organisations are moving towards flatter structures, so less hierarchy, where progressional opportunities are becoming less and less. And those in some of these progressional roles usually stay there and generally can be viewed as blockers to talent. Our company talks about the value of T-shaped opportunities, which is growing the breadth of your skills in the current role you perform and the satisfaction that goes with this. What's your advice on those that are viewed as key talent, but always appear to be looking around for the next opportunity? For example, sometimes desire can be driven by the next title.
Yeah, well, there are so many different routes to this that you can look at. From my point of view, working with companies like Roche and AstraZeneca, you know, there's a lot of people that are blockers there. There's a lot of people that, you know, sometimes get in the way, and they're there for a long time. I think what companies are doing is they're looking at different ways of siloing the business so that you get people that can move around. This is where the internal mobility comes in. So you can work across different areas in the business. You don't just get stuck in one area. So I think the companies that have got that insight to have that internal mobility are the ones that are going to do well there. Because guess what? If you get blocked somewhere, you get stuck somewhere, you've got nowhere to go, you're going to leave until you can find it somewhere else. And I think unfortunately, it's very difficult to actually answer that any better way. There's thousands of different ways that, you know, people are handling this. The big farmers are doing it around internal mobility. They have whole teams looking at individuals, where they can go, what else they can do. I mean, if you look at the sales side at, you know, some of the big pharma companies, and I've trained a lot of them, they come out of sales and they go straight into marketing. They know nothing about marketing, but after 2 years in marketing, then they go back into sales at a higher level. So it's swings and roundabouts how you do it. Different opportunities, different people. I think the more personal you make it, the better. So if a company look at an individual and says, right, where can this person go? Where do we think they're going to go in their career? What do they want to do? Let's see what we can put together for them. That's the sort of company that I'd want to work for.
Yeah. Hey, Simon, do you have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you've got those key talent people who are really, really strong in an area that are in, but they can't necessarily progress upwards because they're blocked, for example, I think it's really, really good to speak with that candidate, find out what their main drives and passions within their current job role are, and then see if there's a way that they can influence that passion downwards and change the way things are done. So if you find someone who can particularly really, really nail one certain bit of legislation, get them championing that. See if there's a way that they can redefine the way they do that internally. That takes them away from potentially a title-driven desire and gives them a bit more of a pet project to work on. They're going to feel more kind of included. They're going to feel more important. It's going to feel like a promotion, but actually you're getting them to redefine the way they're currently working. I think letting them have that sort of internal look into what they currently do and apply their own expertise to it and change it, it's almost another level of empowerment that you can supply without necessarily having to junction someone off too much.
Yeah, I think from a psychological point of view, we need to look at the need behind the need. So why does that person want that next title? It's usually around ego. It's they think that they want that title. They think that it's going to make them, looks better on their resume. But there's really, from their leader's perspective, needs to really understand what's driving that, wanting that next title, because do they really understand what having that next title means and what responsibility goes with that next title, and are they ready for that? And then if you can't give them that next title, you put obviously a succession plan in place to get them to that next title. But we see people all the time that are driven by having a title. We'll have a sales director's role and a estate sales manager will want the job, and like, have you ever done that job before? This is what the P&L, whatever comes with that job. Are you ready for that? So just having those really frank conversations around, why do you want that title? Do you know what goes along with that? Let's really take a deep dive into why that person wants that. But I totally get that, because we see that all the time. You really need to understand the motivation behind why someone wants something. I don't know, Simon, whether I've answered that, but if you wanted to have a chat about that, I'm very happy to. Simon, sorry, just bear with me. Tony, sorry, very interesting presentation. Thanks. Simon, all the people, baby boomers, totally true. Okay, that's it. I think Simon did have another question, but he's just had to log off.
Sure.
So I can follow up with him on that. But it's just around key traits in candidates. So look, we are 11:15. We've gone way over, but it's been wonderful. I know it's 2:15 in the morning for Simon and Vince, and I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, and we will chat, and I'll send out the recording for everybody. And if anyone wants to talk to FarmyWeb, I will send all the details so you can get in touch with them directly if you're interested to know how to improve your employer brand and advertising. You're welcome, Joe. We will. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
She says, sleep well.
Thank you very much. I will.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll be in touch. Take care. And I really, really appreciate today. Thank you. Tonight. This morning. Bye.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.